If you hear one, head for the exits, already open. This event's being live streamed on YouTube, so if you're joining us on YouTube, you can get to subtitles if you go to the button just at the bottom of your screen, and anybody who couldn't make it tonight, let them know that it'll be online, ready to watch later tonight and until the 7th, and probably after that too. So, your candidates for the 2 deputy seats are Scott Wickenden, Independent, Carolyn Oh, we've gone blank. Carolyn Labby, I nearly said Carolyn Olker. You know Carolyn Olker, don't you, Michelle? And Rose Binet, Independent. They've agreed that they'll each make an opening speech of up to 10 minutes, and then we'll open the floor to questions, and they'll take turns to be first to answer. So first to speak this evening will be Scott.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, wonderful. Good evening, Grouville, and thank you for all coming tonight. I was born in Jersey and have lived here nearly all my life, being a resident of St Martin's for the last 18 years. Now, since nomination night, I've been trying to get to every door in both parishes with my leaflet to hear directly from you about what your cares and concerns are for the parish and Jersey. It's been clear from listening to many of you that you all care deeply for the peace, pace and community spirit of parish life. And you've also told me that speeding, policing and facilities for the young are among your main concerns. Your deputies need to get stuck into these issues, and if elected, I will. I've a proven success for fighting for issues when I was a representative of St Helier. I'm standing in this election for a very simple reason: to be your voice for Grouville and St Martin's in the States Assembly. I, like many of you, have been watching the States Assembly over the last 4 years, and one thing has been clear: Jersey can do better, and Islanders know it. Because Jersey today is not what it used to be. People are working harder, but feeling poorer. Families are budgeting down to the last pound, and young people cannot afford to live independently. Many pensioners are wondering what the next bill will bring, and businesses cannot absorb much more. Meanwhile, what have Islanders watched from their politicians over the last years? Arguments, infighting, complaints, political fallouts, votes of no confidence, too much politics and not enough leadership. And while politicians have been busy arguing with each other, the real problems have been getting worse. The cost of living has become unsustainable for many. Energy bills are punishing. Food prices are eye-watering. Housing is out of reach for far too many. And every time Islanders raise concern, they seem to be told some version of, it's complicated. Well, yes, government is complicated. But struggling to pay your bills is not. That's painfully simple. That's why this election matters. It's not about what's on a spreadsheet. It's about kitchens at shop tills and at the end of every month. And while most families are tightening their belts, governments keep expanding. We're now borrowing at unprecedented levels for Jersey. We now have a structural deficit that gets bigger every year, which means in simple English, government is spending more than it brings in. That's not a temporary issue, nor is it clever accounting. It's a warning sign, and pretending otherwise is irresponsible, because having reserves is not an excuse for bad habits. Reserves are there for resilience, not routine overspending. So what needs to change? Firstly, government must rediscover discipline, not cuts for the sake of headlines, not ideological austerity, but discipline for every household in Jersey that understands that one basic principle: you cannot keep spending more than you earn. Government needs to understand that too. We need to stop spending on vanity projects like the carbon neutral roadmap, which has so far cost us 23 million and not delivered any real change. We just can't afford it. We do not want to see solar panels on our green fields, nor windmills dominating our coastline. Why should we be forced to swap out oil heating systems that work for systems that may not heat your house? Secondly, we must tackle the cost of living where government can actually make a difference. For instance, standing charges on utilities, or let's call them what many islanders see them as, a tax on simply living. Something you pay before you've even switched on your kettle. Standing charges need better scrutiny, better transparency, and regulators prepared to stand up for islanders, not just providers. We need to look at food prices, because being an island should not be a blank cheque. Yes, we import. Yes, logistics cost money, but families deserve better transparency and fair competition. We should be backing local producers properly, which is why I'm suggesting the creation of a parish farmer and fisheries market. Not another glossy strategy, not another consultant report, just a simple local solution that will help producers and consumers. We need to review duties being charged on fuel, alcohol and tobacco. It now costs government more money to raise duty than the income that it brings in. Thirdly, we need to stop treating businesses like the enemy. Without thriving businesses, there is no thriving public services, no tax revenue, no jobs, no investment, no opportunity. Small businesses are being squeezed from every direction. Rising wage pressure, energy costs, regulation, recruitment challenges, inflation. Now, I'm in support of fair play, but increasing the minimum wage by £4.35 in 4 years is not a policy that is rooted in any reality. If you force business costs up recklessly, businesses have to pass them on. And then it's you who sees that at the checkout. Government must become accountable again. This matters because trust has been damaged. In 2019, power inside government shifted significantly towards the senior executive, but the accountability didn't shift with it. That imbalance needs fixing. If elected politicians are accountable to voters, then the system must ensure that those delivering the decisions are clearly accountable too, because responsibility without authority doesn't work, and authority without accountability is even worse. Now let me tell you why I'm standing, because I know how government works. I've been there. I was first elected in 2014, and I served 2 terms before deciding to take a break from politics. I served as the Assistant Chief Minister, the Assistant Minister for Social Security, the Minister for Children and Education. I served on scrutiny, on public accounts and planning, to name a few. I've seen good government and bad. I've seen how easily good intentions get lost in bureaucracy, politics and poor delivery. I'm not standing to learn how government works. I'm standing because I already have that understanding and because Jersey now needs delivery. This election comes down to me. Do we continue with more distractions, more excuses, more politics about politics? Or do we get serious again about affordability, accountability, competence and delivery? Jersey is a remarkable place, but remarkable places are not guaranteed success. They require leadership, clear priorities, financial discipline, and elected representatives willing to say what needs to be said, not just what's polling well. It's a time for experience, independence, common sense, and representatives focused on the pressures affecting everyday life. So I'm asking for your support. I'm Scott Wickenden, and I would be honoured to serve you as Deputy of Grouville and St Martin's.
Thank you. Carolyn Labby.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for all being here this hot evening. My name is Carolyn Labby, and although many of you know me already, I'd like to spend a few minutes letting you know who I am, what drives me, and what you can expect from me if you were kind enough to elect me on the 7th of June. I was born and brought up in Grouville. I've raised my family here, and I care deeply about our island and its future. I stand as an independent, I vote with integrity, and I work collaboratively for the good of the whole island. I believe we need effective politicians who are rooted in community values, who understand the economy, and who can represent Jersey internationally. I'm standing because I believe Jersey needs clear direction and because Grouville and St Martin deserve visible, accessible representation with a proven track record of delivery at parish, island and international levels. I've always believed that a successful future for Jersey depends on striking the right balance between the economy, the environment and our community. and I still believe that. This evening, in the time available, I wish to focus mainly on the economy, because that is where many of our current pressures lie. Islanders feel that pressure every day, in the cost of living, in housing, in the difficulty of getting on, getting ahead, and sometimes just keeping up. Jersey is never short of plans, reports, strategies, or just good intentions. I was involved some years ago in the New Perspectives work, which set out a clear direction for diversifying the economy, improving productivity, and investing in skills. But too often, delivery has been slow, responsibilities blurred, accountability weak, and money is lost through duplication and inefficiency. Money that should be delivering real outcomes for islanders. We need a simpler approach where progress is measured, financial discipline restored, and delivery lines are clear. We also need to look again at the way we govern. We've drifted too far towards trying to mimic much larger jurisdictions, adding layers of regulation, compliance, and process that do not always suit a small island, let alone small businesses. That approach holds us back. It slows decision-making, frustrates enterprise, and weakens competitiveness. Jersey succeeds when it makes decisions that are right for Jersey. So we need to get back to basics. Hard work should be rewarded, not thwarted. It should be quicker, easier, and more competitive to do business in Jersey. We need to reform the often unpredictable planning process, support entrepreneurs and enterprise, and back key sectors including tourism, agriculture, fisheries, and the creative industries, which do not only support jobs, but also our landscape, our restaurants, our transport links, and our quality of life. We must invest in skills. We need to make trades and vocational learning attractive again, support apprenticeships, and create more opportunities for people to reskill, stay active, and remain connected to their communities throughout their lives. Jersey is and must remain an outward-facing island. Given the opportunity, I would like to pursue better relations with our closest neighbours in France, giving focus to our visitor economy, including returning Gorey Harbour to a working port, and continue to promote the island's international reputation overseas. Soft power and diplomacy cannot be underestimated. My role as International Development Minister and Chair of Jersey Overseas Aid has shown me that this work is not simply about aid. It is about relationships, reputation, and standing. It draws on Jersey's strengths and expertise in dairy, conservation, and financial inclusion. It helps project the island as serious, responsible, and outward-looking in an increasingly uncertain world. That is why island identity matters. It is about understanding who we are, what makes Jersey distinctive, and where we, as an island, want to be in 5, 10, 20 years' time. We're a small community, and our future should combine our distinct identity, a confident international presence, and an economy that plays to our natural advantages. We need to build on these strengths with confidence and create a vision for our island's future. And while this speech is about Jersey's future, this is also a parish election. My parish connections matter deeply to me, which is why I choose to stand for deputy. They keep me grounded in the concerns of parishioners and in the daily realities of island life. I've always believed that good politics starts with listening and staying connected to the community you serve, developing local networks and providing accessible representation, which is why I hold my regular parish surgeries. It is also why I set up the Grouville Gazette, Les Grouvelles, the Grouville Community Support Group, and following its success in the last term, I've set up a similar community support group in St Martin. At this point, I'd like to thank all the volunteers that are involved to help strengthen the parish community and our life in these beautiful parishes. So my commitment to you is simple: to provide visible, grounded and experienced representation for the parishioners of Grouville and St Martin, and to play an active role in shaping a strong future for Jersey, one that is rooted in island identity, our community values, and one which offers islanders a clear, confident sense of direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose Binet.
Good evening. I'm going to remain seated because I find it a bit easier. The last 4 years have passed very quickly, and during that time I have been an Assistant Minister for Health and have also sat on the Legislation Advisory Panel. Since January 2024, I have also been a member of the State's Employment Board. These positions have allowed me to gain a lot of insight into how the government functions, as well as now having a much better understanding of the functioning of the State's Assembly. I've found the workings of both to be incredibly frustrating and have been shocked by the amount of time it takes to get anything done. In the real world, if a business worked at the same pace, it would not survive, not even for a short amount of time. It is my view that we have to make some major changes to the way we are currently operating, and we need to look at all areas of government, including arm's length bodies, etc., to ensure that we are running as efficiently as possible. Decide on what the essentials are and what are the nice-to-haves, which we are increasingly unable to afford. We need to address how the State's Assembly is running, length of speeches, usefulness of some propositions, and attendance in the Assembly itself. Should we continue with ministerial government, which has created a pseudo-opposition, where those not in government have been effectively confined to the backbenchers in a reactive rather than proactive role? Or should we be looking at a hybrid, the old and the new, which is how the current health ministerial team functions, which has been very collaborative and has worked well? Do we need so many states members? Should we just be electing individuals to run the government? We must also ask ourselves why more people are not interested in standing for election. Is it the thought of being elected and then finding themselves without a job in the government? Is it the thought of unnecessarily lengthy state sittings? Or perhaps it is the thought of propositions coming to the Assembly without sufficient consideration having been given to them before they are presented. We also need to ensure that no law comes into force until it is certain that any required safeguards or regulations are in place. And we should consider making the term of office 5 years rather than 4. After all, it takes a considerable amount of time for new members to learn the ropes, and over a year before the following election, the government is perceived as a government on the way out, and Assembly members start concerning themselves with re-election. Election causes periods of downtime and are costly. I appreciate this has been mentioned by previous politicians, but the huge amount of extremely lengthy reports, which no one person would ever be able to read, must be tackled too. How many of them are actually read, and what proportion just gather dust on the IT shelf? We need better planning for the future. We need to decide on how we are going to fund healthcare. With an ageing population and the continuous development of new drugs and treatments, there is an ever-increasing demand for funding. Had the health ministerial team not run out of time, we had intended to hold a public meeting to not only discuss future funding, but also to discuss what changes have been made over the last couple of years by the team, which have included working to repair the damage inflicted on the service in the past by getting public health, ambulance service, health digital and health HR returned to the service. Also, a digital health board has been set up with a cross-section of representation, including outside providers, to ensure that everyone understands what each other is currently doing and what is required to be done in order to achieve a digitally integrated service, including a single patient record, which will make things safer and more efficient in the future. A health partnership board has also been established, and whilst it is very much in its infancy, I hope that it will improve decision making, as all those involved in providing external services will be able to work with government services in future to improve a patient's experience by helping streamline pathways, improve efficiencies, and also ensure that money is put to its best use. Similar boards should be established in other areas of government to integrate, for example, representatives from the hospitality and tourist industries to work in partnership with the department. I've also been a political representative on the new hospital project, which is not only looking at the new hospital facilities, but also planning for the future, looking at all current service provision, the premises that providers are currently operating from, and future requirements, including those relating to the rapidly aging population. Other facilities that we have been working on are those in Lamott Street. Hopefully, if planning permission is received, work will commence on the site, which will greatly improve the facilities available for those individuals living with mental illness. In spite of the comments that have appeared on the front pages of the Jersey Evening Post recently, I am very keen to progress the work currently being undertaken to update and improve our medicines laws and regulations. Because as well as ensuring user safety, I believe there are future possibilities in the medical technology sector as well as other areas. Improvements to our occupational health services is another area which must be progressed. Moving on to other areas of government. We need to have a council of ministers that work more closely together. More issues of concern should be raised at meetings and discussed rather than mainly just covering propositions that are going to be presented to the Assembly. Decisions that have been made should not be held up without consultation. Also, it is my belief that in order to streamline government, an exercise that is currently underway, you need to understand how each area works and those who are working within it, to understand what changes need to be made by working with those that understand their own areas best, rather than decisions being taken by individuals who have no understanding and have not considered it necessary to have any. I think it is wrong to move things about without taking any heed of the consequences, what effect a decision might have on services and on the individuals working within or receiving those services. The planning process must be simplified, and it is also essential that the next government assists those with redundant glasshouse sites, helps to resolve the problem that has been left to run on for decades rather than to continue to be part of it. We must ensure that we have a government-wide data sharing agreements in place and must improve and simplify the commissioning of services. Large savings could be made if we achieved only this. The requirement for some individuals to have lived in the island for 10 years before they can rent a property is long overdue for review. Bullying must not be tolerated. There is no point in telling everyone about your values if they extend no further than the paper they are written on. There are many other issues to address, and unfortunately, like all other places, we are susceptible to what is happening globally. And because the decisions being made by those with extreme power sit outside of our control, it makes it even more essential that we do what we can to put ourselves in the best position to weather the storms. I appreciate that many before me have questioned the way in which we do things, and I know only too well how much time it takes to get anything done. But we cannot continue as we are. As I have already said, there is much work to be done, and I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to put what I have learned over the last 4 years to good use, to continue with the work and be part of improving efficiency. I would like to end by saying that it has been a real privilege to represent the interests of the residents of Grouville over the last 4 years, and I would just like to thank you all for having given me the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard what all the candidates have got to say. Now it's time for your questions. Sharon will bring you the microphone. Please hold it nice and close to your mouth like this and hand back the microphone after you've asked your question. Please use your full name and just confirm that you are a parishioner when asking your question. And please make sure your question can be answered by all the candidates and isn't directed at just one of them. And let's leave the speeches to the candidates. Keep your questions nice and succinct. Okay, let's get started. Who wants to ask a question? Okay. Sharon's just coming with the mic.
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Caroline Anderson, and yes, I'm a parishioner of Grouville. The sitting deputies will not be surprised to hear me asking this question, as last year I campaigned vigorously against taking any money from the Social Security Reserve, which in fact exacerbated the structural deficit that we were already in. And by doing so and not having a review and not seeking to take anything from the employer or the employee either, you've just made matters worse. So my question to you is, because that's over and done with, and the two sitting deputies voted for that proposition with the executive, my question to you is, in 4 years' time or 3.5 years' time, you will have to find £50 million to put back into the Social Security Reserve each year to reinstate that contribution. My question to you is, with all the other competing demands that will be there, is where will you find the 50 million? I realise that it's almost really to the sitting deputies, but to the new member, he will come into the situation and in 4 years' time, 3.5 years' time, will have to find £50 million to put back into the Social Security Reserve Fund. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. First to answer is Scott.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, for the question. A nice, easy one to break us in. Yeah. Well, this structural deficit, the size of government, overspending, overborrowing, where we're finding ourselves at now, is not making it easy for anyone that gets elected to go in. For me, I think we need to change the public finances law to make it stronger. And at the moment, it says in the public finance law that we cannot budget to spend more than our estimated income, but we're allowing things like the interest on our investments to be part of that estimated income. I think if we were to, over 4 years, drop that by 20% and saying you cannot use 20% of the interest, and then you cannot use 40% of the interest, and then you cannot use 60% of the interest, and that interest that comes in, instead of being used as budgetable money, would go into our rainy day fund, and we could do things now with something like that. We could be saying we're going to scrap fuel duty while this war is going on in the Straits of Hormuz, which costs, that fuel duty is about 2.2 million a month in Jersey. That's what we raise through fuel duty and GST, if my figures are correct. It's around about that much. We'd have plenty of money in our reserve to bring that down, to bring down the cost of living, so we're not getting double inflation from the fact that we sell 98% of everything in this island is imported. There's already inflation on it before we get it into the island, and now because of our fuel prices, we're getting double inflation. So there are ways that's how I would drop down and make sure that we've got the money to put in, but I think it will also be good about discipline within our public finances.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you, Caroline. If I could just explain, contributions to that fund are 285 million, and the benefits and pensions that are paid out are 370 million. The shortfall is made up from taxpayers' money. What the states decided to do was not contribute so much into the fund, and instead use some of those monies. They paid in 22.7 million. Some of those monies were used. It was 10 million that was used for the Better Business Support to help employers transition to the living wage, to help them, and also 17.6 million was used for health projects, because £1 spent in health saves £4 in the long run. We have 2.6 billion in reserves this year, and we will have 2.9 billion by 2029. That is 7.5 years of expenditure. The actuaries advise that it's prudent to have 1 year's expenditure. So I think for the good those monies did or are doing, it was better to spend that than we rediverted taxpayers' money, not contributions, to other uses. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose. Rose?
I've just gone blank, sorry.
Do you want to reiterate the question? Do you want to hear the question again?
It's not as easy as people think it is when you have to make decisions. When you're part of government, you sometimes decide on things that you don't necessarily agree with. So in order to get to a budget at the end of the year, I'm sure you know this, that you will have to vote for some things that you don't think are perhaps right, or other people won't vote with what you think you need. And in the health department, I have to say that unless we get our digital services up and running and correctly running, it's going to cost far more money in the long run. It is not safe for patients as it currently is. Nothing is tied up. There's so many different systems that people are actually using at the minute. For example, if you go to have an operation on the mainland, that information isn't directly fed back onto your records. At the moment, if you go into the hospital, people can't see your doctor's records. When you get discharged, the doctor can't see your discharge sheet. That's if you've had one. The mental health services operate on a different system, as does the intensive care unit. I can go on. Now, in my opinion, as much as I agree with you in principle that borrowing from the fund is not, or taking from the fund, whichever word you'd like to use, is not the ideal. But sometimes you have to take the money to achieve what you need to in the long run. I mean, there's so many things I can give you examples of. Phototherapy machine broke down. No phototherapy machine, costing far more money. People might have to have biologicals instead of using a phototherapy machine. So we found there was some charitable funds, so that we use those charitable funds to buy a new machine, which is going to make it much better for people in the long run and save a lot of money. Now, I know you asked about how we're going to pay the money back, and I'm going to address that. That's why in my speech I've pointed to quite a lot of areas where I think that we could start making savings, and that's what I think we need to do. We need to cut back on a lot of the things that we shouldn't be doing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just gentleman there.
Thank you. Mark Husey. The Constable of Grouville, and I'm glad he's with us this evening, made a statement to the media confirming that rates assessments of domestic properties in Grouville were the highest of any parish. St Martin's weren't far behind. Rates assessments are used to calculate two annual bills. The first one is for parish income. I'll put that to one side. The second one is for the island-wide rate, which was introduced by the Rates Law in 2005. That was a new tax that came into being at that time. The law actually requires that properties with similar attributes, substantially similar or similar attributes, should be assessed equally across the parish, or across all 12 parishes, because the rates assessment is used for the island-wide rate. But in the 21 years that the law has been in force, each of the 12 parishes has issued its own unique rate assessment guidelines. Also, there was no review of where the rates were in 2005 comparative to each other. We're now in a situation where rates vary considerably across the parishes for almost identical houses. That was not what the law was intended to do, and the Comité des Connétables deny that there is a problem. The chairman in the chamber said that there were no inconsistencies in the assessments.
Are we coming to a question here?
We're coming to a question.
Okay.
The system at the present is unfair, particularly for Grouville and St Martin residents. My own property was overassessed by £660 in 1 year. If elected, what will the candidates do in practical terms to address the imbalance of rates assessments that exist across the 12 parishes?
Thank you. So first to answer that will be Carolyn.
Thank you for your question, Mark. As you know, this is a municipality issue, and I was quite surprised you didn't come to the Constable's Hustings and ask him that, because obviously it's in his domain. However, we have spoken about this before, and the island-wide rate I accept because I think Grouville will have more quarters than other parishes. So we can't really go backwards because, as you say, this has been going on 21 years and properties have changed hands, etc. The only thing I could suggest is our rateable quarters are reduced by however much we're over other parishes. If it's 5% or 10%, it's reduced by that amount, and then the island-wide rate would correspond with that. I don't see how we can get into a situation whereby we're giving monies back, because like I say, properties have changed hands. So I think the amount of quarters would have to be reduced. That's the only way I can see that happening.
Thank you. Rose.
Well, really, I think it does sit with the constables of the parishes. I know you're shaking your head, but for the rate, sorry.
I think he's saying it's the States Assembly that makes the regulations. Is that what you're saying? And you're in the States Assembly, or you would be?
Yeah, but you're saying that the rates differ between parishes. For example, if you've got a 3-bedroomed house in Grouville, you're saying that you pay more than if you live in St Saviour. That's what you're saying. Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case, because I pay rates in a few different parishes, and I have to say that that's not entirely correct. But what you're saying that we, as politicians, should itemize like a 3-bedroomed house, 4-bedroomed house, and actually put a rateable value against each of those items, because it's not as straightforward as that. In some respects, some people might say, and this is what I think may have been happening, that if you've got a large garden and a nice view, your 3-bedroomed house should be rated at a higher value than someone who didn't have a nice garden and a nice view. So I'm not. What exactly would you like to happen?
Could you wait for the mic?
I know I'm supposed to be the one coming up with the answers, but I do think it's actually quite difficult for rates assessors, unless we went down the road of the size of your garden, whether you've got a view or not, and say whether we want to rate those things or not.
And try to keep it brief.
I'll try and keep the answer brief. The regulations, the law as it stands at the moment, permits the states to bring in regulations as to the way properties are assessed. At the moment, we have 12 parishes, and you are quite right, it's each parish setting the assessment, but the law requires that properties should be assessed like for like. So the 3-bedroom property should be 3-bedroom. That is not the case, and the evidence shows that.
Right, so you're actually suggesting that's what the States Assembly should do, put a price against a 3-bedroom property, 4-bedroom property, and go and itemise each one.
No, that could still be with the constables or the assessment committee. All I'm saying is the states could bring, and you as member of the states, could bring forward a regulation under the existing law to require parishes to have a consistent approach across the parishes. The states members are not going to be setting the figures.
So that's the question then. Would you support the States Assembly having a kind of consistent way of setting rates across the parishes?
Well, I think the best thing we do, it would be for us to go and speak with the constables and to try and find a way forward and see if there is a way that we could have a more equitable rating system.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Thank you. Well, there has been a document that was done in the last term was called The Relationship Between Parishes and Government, that had 53 key findings, 30 recommendations, and the one that I didn't agree with all of them. I thought it was a very political document, quite frankly. The recommendation 27 was to better explain how rateable values are determined, and I think that's really important so everyone can understand things better. The rates law, I think you were saying that there is something in there that says that all properties should be for like. So what's actually happening is the law isn't being paid attention. So that's very difficult when you're in the assembly, that you're going, well, we've put the law in. If that's not happening, then we need to then go and use our voice in the assembly to go and question whoever will be the chair of the committee to contabs and try and get some answers in that way about why, if the law is done. Now, I haven't read the law in detail, and I will after today, but the best thing I can do is say that, challenge why, if that's what's in the law, it's not happening. I don't understand the rates fully myself in the way that it works, so I admit that outwardly. But as an elected representative, the powers you have to use your voice and to challenge and ask questions within the states can be somewhere where you can push things forward.
Thank you. Next question. Over there.
It's quite a simple question for myself. If fuel prices stayed what they are at the moment, would you want to keep the fuel duty stable, lower it, or increase it in the up and coming 4 years?
So that's a question about fuel duty. Rose?
I think we'd need to consider lowering it, but once again, we'd have to find out how we would make up the loss of income from lowering it. But it's something I think we'd have to consider.
Scott?
Thank you. I think that it should be getting frozen. Not frozen, literally taken away right now whilst things are going on. But I also don't agree with putting up duty at the moment. This is one of my bugbears. In 2023 and 24, putting up fuel duty, alcohol duty and cigarette duty, which raised the cost of living for everybody on the island, raised £2.2 million, but had a 0.4% uplift in RPI effect. And it cost £5 million in pay rises because civil servants' pay rise is so large now that it's actually costing us more to raise our duty to raise income than the money that we're getting. So I'm completely against raising any duties at the moment until we can get the cost of how much the civil service is costing us right now to a level where when we do raise duty, we're not having to find money somewhere else to cover the cost of it.
Thank you. Carolyn?
It's very tempting to say, right, no duty on fuel, alcohol, cigarettes, all those things. In the past, I remember when the states have said, okay, we won't put any duty, we won't increase alcohol this year. So the states kept their prices steady, but then establishments rose theirs. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Whilst we have this cost of living crisis, I think we have got to monitor this really quickly, because obviously duty at the higher the fuel prices, it has a huge impact on the economy. I would like the competition authority to almost be given more teeth so that we can ensure that we are getting a fair deal from the fuel suppliers and everyone else. But at the moment, I mean, government could and should and have frozen duty on these things just to ease the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Wait, we've got three. So should we, I think this gentleman with the blue shirt was first, and then the yellow T-shirt, and then lady at the front. So put your hand up again, please, so that Sharon can see you. There we go.
Thank you very much. Christopher Floyd, I'm a resident of La Roque. I want to ask you a question about the economy is not working, and it seems cut through in all these manifestos, and it's already cutting through here. And that's something that's recognised in the manifestos. But what I
Keep
find
your
is
mic
not
near your mouth, otherwise
Sorry.
people won't hear you online. No, it is on. Just put it closer to your
Sorry.
mouth. That's it.
What is not recognised in these manifestos that worries me greatly is the levels of inequality in Jersey. Inequality in wealth and in opportunity. And I suggest that that's a serious problem for us, and you can see how that's already playing out in the UK, and it will begin to play out here. And I want to pick up on a quotation, is that taxes are the price that we pay for a civilized society. And I suggest that a civilized society shouldn't be, or I would be, more comfortable if the civilized society in Jersey didn't tolerate the level of inequality that we have here. And I want to ask whether you recognize that as an issue, and if you do, what you're going to do about it, but specifically, would you be prepared to support a citizens' assembly to look at the issue of fairer taxation, both personal taxation and taxation of businesses, and particularly the finance industry?
Okay. So, first answer is Scott.
I'm getting all the easy ones to start with tonight. The question is, would I support a citizens' assembly to have a look at taxation to make sure that there's not too much unfair inequality? I mean, if that's what a lot of people want to do, and have a look at it, but we'd need to make sure whatever terms of reference were put there. Also, a citizens' assembly can only make recommendations that then have to go to a minister or to the assembly if it was done in that way, to have them then ratify it, because the citizens' assembly is not elected by the people, it's put in place by the elected representatives. So we could do a citizens' assembly to look at inequality within income and tax on the island, but it would be more important to work out, if we did that, what would their terms be, and how does it make sure that if they did come up with anything, it does or doesn't happen? Because we've seen referendums before that have gone through the States Assembly and been completely ignored.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you for your question, Christopher. Yes, I would support a citizens' assembly. In actual fact, I think the states and certainly ministers, if we're going to retain just the minister having the decision-making powers, rather than what I would far prefer is the committee system. But if we, I would far prefer the minister to liaise with different cohorts of people that have expertise in areas and industry. When my voice is going. When there are serious decisions to make. So personal taxation, business taxation, I think that would have to be something to discuss with industry and other social groups that are affected by it, obviously, because what we don't want is to impose things and then have unforeseen unforeseen consequences. But any ideas that come from people with expertise, I would welcome.
Thank you. Rose.
I wouldn't be adverse to a panel of people who've got some understanding of taxation. You mentioned the finance industry, but I think we have to be very careful about what we do with the finance industry, because they can go wherever they like. They don't have to stay here. And I don't think people perhaps realise how much they contribute to taxation in this island. And if they left, I think we'd all be a lot worse off. That's similar to the high net worth individuals who contribute a lot of taxation, but are highly mobile. So I think we have to be very careful before we do that. I've not quite ever understood why businesses locally don't pay 20% tax, there's the 2020 thing, and I do think that should be looked at again.
Thank you. Next, the question was going to the gentleman in the yellow polo shirt, and then we'll go to the lady here. And who is it over here? We'll come to you next after that.
Hi, I'm Filippo. I'm Grouville resident. I'm not sure if I missed, you know, the question that was asked about the funds taken from the social or borrowed, whatever, or transferred from the social security. There was mention of 10 million of that being put to, used in businesses to help them reach the living wage. So that 10 million, was that given to businesses? And did they use that money then to pay their staff more money? I'm not sure how that 10 million worked into businesses.
Okay, first to answer is Carolyn.
Thank you, Filippo. This was given in the form of a grant to help businesses reach reach the increases given in the living wage.
You need a mic because nobody at home will be able to hear you.
So they use that money to pay their staff more. I don't understand. You gave them this money to help them reach paying their staff the living wage. So what have they done with the money you gave them to reach that objective?
Rose.
The money wasn't.
It's a bit
The money
unclear.
wasn't given directly to businesses. It was money that was made available to businesses to improve their efficiency.
So did businesses take some of this money as a grant?
Did they? Sorry.
Did businesses take the money?
If you applied for it and you made a good case, yes,
so
you got
out
some
of
money.
the 10 million, did it all go on businesses applying for it, or was there some left over?
I'm sorry, but I don't know how much has been taken up. I don't know what the figure has been. The money was, I think, it was done through Jersey Business, and you could apply for funding for particular items for your business to make yourself more efficient. It was something that I didn't agree with. I couldn't really see how it was going to assist particularly, but that's how it works. So if you've got a business and you've got something that is within the rules, you can apply for a grant.
Scott.
And long term, how did that? What measures in place were there for somebody applying for this grant, so that in order they take the money to be able to increase the living wage of their employees, but long term, do they need more grant money to keep that going? I'm trying to understand the mechanics of me applying for some money to pay my staff more, but long term, how do I sustain that?
Right. So
and what are you looking for me to do in return to do that with the money you're giving me? Well, not you, the taxpayers' money.
Okay.
Scott.
So this was called the Better Business Support Grant, okay, and it was designed to help the fact that we've put this ridiculous amount of additional money onto minimum wage for companies that have minimum wage workers, which is hospitality, hoteliers, farming, restaurants, public houses. Now, if they wanted to create more productivity using technology or any other level of productivity, they could apply for a grant of, I think, up to, I think it was up to like £40,000 or £400,000, I don't know. But it would be, you had to match fund it, so you had to have the money in the first place. And it was a complete farce. It was the worst grant funding system I've ever seen. There's no way it was going to help. What are you going to do in the bars? Are you going to replace your staff with the computers in Japan that pour your pint for you? What are you going to do in agriculture for the workers that are picking potatoes? Yeah. Are you going to replace them with these fancy systems? And we're not helping the people move up the minimum wage, and businesses help that. We're getting rid of staff if we do that in places where you actually need people to serve you your food, to pour you your pint, to go and stock the shelves in the supermarkets. It was a complete fallacy. It was them trying to say that they're putting up the minimum wage. there was support for the industries that use low income or minimum wage workers. It didn't work. Nobody really applied for it. They used it for other things like they did with every pot of money to try and balance the budgets at the end of the month. So that's what happened. What you would have to have done is put in technology or some kind of productivity change to your business. You would have had to forked out the same amount of money and they would have match funded you if you were successful in it. Sorry. I thought it was absolute rubbish.
Thank you. No, I think we'll move on to the next question now. I think we've kind of explored that one. We've got somebody here who wanted to ask a question.
Hello, my name is Marina Knoll and I'm a resident in Grouville. So my question is about the schools within the two parishes. So in Jersey, we like to say that every child matters, Jersey children first, every child our future. But for parents and teachers, we're still seeing SEN provision, special educational needs provision, depending too much on which school your child attends. Grouville and St Martin's are both considered to be lovely parish schools without any SEN needs. And yet that's not the case within the schools. Teachers and staff are stretched thin. They're under-resourced and under-provided. And many parents feel that the school that a child attends and how hard families fight is where they get the support. So my question is, how will you ensure that we get support for teachers, staff, parents, and the schools to ensure they are properly equipped and inclusion is backed by proper funding and resources and not just goodwill? Thank you.
Thank you. Rose is first to answer this one.
That's quite a tricky question, actually. I'm not that familiar with what's going on in education at the minute, but I do know there are a lot of children with special educational needs. And I'm just wondering if perhaps we ought to take a different view, a different approach on how we're actually trying to teach these children. I think sometimes putting them in a classroom for long periods of time is not necessarily the right answer. And perhaps we should be trying something different as much as just using or trying to apply extra money to it. And that's how I think we should perhaps look at a different approach.
Scott.
Sorry, I swallowed some water. Right, so being the ex-education minister, I definitely have an answer for this. I don't think that the way that we're doing SEN provision works. When I was the minister, we looked at how the funding formula would work for children that have a record of need, and if they were assessed with a record of need, then they would have additional money sent to the schools. So all schools should get that funding if the record of need is found to have provision required. But it's not being dealt with very well, and it's not being dealt with consistently from many parents that I've spoken to. What I would do is take that SEND money and I would put it into a department for special education needs away from education. I think the special educational needs should be there for the children, so we can then create a special education needs department that can work consistently with all the schools and all the children, and that the resources that go in can be reused. Because the problem we've got at the moment is a school will buy something because a child has a resource need for a piece of equipment. It could be hearing equipment. But if another child comes into the school and they require another hearing equipment, they don't just reuse the one that they've got. They get to buy another one, and then it's just not working the way it should be. And I don't even know that if the money goes into the school, it doesn't just get lost into the base budgets of the school and it's actually being used for the child. There doesn't seem to be a good way of reporting it. So I would take it away so the money can be tracked, it can be looked at, and that the department can deal with parents, schools, when they're dealing with the children, because it's about the children.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you, Marina. I know that the CEO of the States and a couple of head teachers and specialist teachers were doing another report, but they were looking at the issue because there is less children, certainly in the primary schools now, but there are more children with special needs. So, and there have been, I think in the last 5 years, 200 more classroom assistants employed, which is quite a number. But they were looking at the whole issue about special needs and the dropping in pupil numbers, because I think the whole thing, the structure is probably not right at the moment, so it does definitely need looking at.
Thank you. Next question over here. There.
Adrian DeMaid, La Roque. I've been told by several members, past and present, of what you might call the civil service, that the civil service in Jersey is bloated, often by people who haven't got commitment to the island, and that it's very difficult for politicians to cope with this because they restrict the amount and timing of information that's fed to politicians. And I notice that on Facebook, I get a lot of politicians telling me how they're interested in local issues. But in reality, what they spend the money on is wet dreams like offshore wind farms, solar panels on agricultural land, DFDS, etc. And I wondered if there's any truth in this, because it's been said to me by, for example, a woman who used to work for the civil service here and left because she couldn't cope with the way it works. So are you controlled by your civil service?
So first to answer this one is Scott.
I wouldn't say we're controlled in that way. I do think the civil service needs to be looked at. I think the wage bill of £700 million at the moment per year just on the wage bill is way too much. I think we need to assess having RPI pay rises plus at the end of each year for all bands, because I think that's pushing our wage packet up way too much. When we can't put duty up and and raise money, then we need to do something about the effect that it's having. There is an issue with the fact that back in 2018, P1 2018, the machinery of government that was brought forward, it set out a change in the way that we do government. It said that we would change the public finances law to create one principal accounting officer that was able to borrow, move money, set overdraft limits, and it would not be the 11 monarchs, as I used to call them, the chief officers of each department. But in the document, it had the accountability framework that said that not only do we change the public finances law, but we changed the employment of the States of Jersey law and the States of Jersey law to set the accountability for the powers that are now being distributed to the senior executive of the civil service. When P23 2019 came in, which was the new public finances law, the few of us screamed and shouted about where's the accountability bit. You're bringing in the changes to the powers of the civil service, but you're not bringing in the accountability for us as elected representatives to hold them to account for how they're moving that money and what they've done with it based on decisions that have been made by your representatives within the Assembly. That's never happened still. That's the one thing that if I'm elected, I want to get in. It is the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that the accountability are there so the civil service is accountable to the people that you elect and not accountable to themselves.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you, Adrian. I think we all three alluded to the fact in our opening remarks that the structure of the states isn't working as it should. The delivery is not there. As Scott has eloquently described, decisions are made, and yet months, years later, they're still not, the decision is not implemented. So that there is definitely an issue on delivery. Now, whether it's the way we make the decisions, because we take no account of the resources available, the manpower available, we just make decisions in the States Assembly and expect things to happen. So I think the structure isn't working as it should. Personally, I far preferred the committee system. I felt that there were 5 or 6 people sitting around the table at the time, with a civil servant, with the CEO of the department, and there were 6 people that could contribute to the decision. There was cross-pollination between that committee and others where members went and sat on other committees. So we knew what was going on. As far as the civil service being bloated, there is an employment freeze. There has been since 2024. It saved 29 million, and hopefully it's going to carry on saving. It's not, there was some voluntary redundancy offered about 3 years ago. That was not my idea of how we should have gone about things, because what excuse me, what happened was we lost the best people. So I think there is some restructuring, and like I say, I would prefer the committee system.
Thank you. Rose?
It's like everything, it's all about people. Sometimes I've had experience of the people I've worked with. Some of them are excellent. They work exceptionally hard, and there are others that would be better suited to work elsewhere. Some of the problem is in being able to remove individuals that would be better suited to work elsewhere. It's exceptionally difficult. So I think some of it is because the employment laws are not implemented at the right time, so that if people are not performing as they should be, it should be instantly addressed, not left to roll on for years, as it does in some case, costing the taxpayer a fortune. I do think that that if we address some of the issues that I've mentioned and try to thin down what's going on department by department, which is, I think, would say it was quite easily achievable. Then you try and make sure that you've got people working within the government that are all working to the same agenda and have all got the right attitude to their job.
Thank you. Next question. Gentleman Hill, nice and close to the mic.
Trevor Dearsley, Grouville. When my son was 13, he said, "I'm not coming back here. It's too small, there are too many people, and you have to be a millionaire to buy a house." Retirement is a recent concept, post-Second World War. The UK state pension is 80 years old this year. It was introduced in 1946. And then, in the UK, there were 10 working people to every retired person. There are now 4 working people to every retired person. With boomers like myself retiring and the youth not returning to the island, I accept your comment about the reserves. The outlook for the public finances is bleak. What would you say to my son to persuade him to return to the island after university?
Thank you for that question. Carolyn first.
Oh, well, that's an easy one. Yes, there's nothing we can do about the size of the island. Yes. So, we live in a small island. It's a successful island. So we have full employment, and as a consequence, property and cost of living is high. I have children in the island and one in London. It is difficult to afford housing over here. There are systems that can help them, like the first steps. What I would like to see is those expanded, whereby we could loan the first-time buyer deposit. So instead of paying, sorry, my voice is going. So instead of paying huge amounts of rent, they're paying a mortgage. At least it's there. Okay, sorry. And obviously, I think if you can make it in the island, it does offer a good quality of life. I think we have, it is a beautiful island. We've got access to all the beaches and things, and it's a fantastic place to bring up a family.
Thank you. Rose?
I'm sorry that your son doesn't want to return here, because I think it's a lovely place. I think some of the suggestions that Carolyn has made, as in trying to help to assist younger people in buying their own home, I think we should definitely try and see what we can do. Over and above that, I'm not really sure how we can attract anybody back, I'm afraid. I hope he decides later on that he realises how lovely it is here and he decides to return.
Thank you. Scott?
I'd say to him, that's not a decision for today. You're 13. You don't know what's going to happen down the line. Things could change. You live in an island that has less than one crime reported a day, that's clean. We don't have poverty like other places in the world, or immigration problems like other people in the world, or terrorists like other places in the world. You live in a beautiful, safe island. Now, let's hope. I would also say, get out the island for a little bit. My brother left and he came back with his family, and he's been happier ever than he's back in the island rather than living in the UK. He's safer for his children. It's beautiful. The kids get to go to the beach without having to drive for 2 hours. I would say to your son, just see what happens. I do think that it's going to stay on the political agenda for a while about how we do something about this. It can't carry on just being words. It has to have something happen.
Thank you. Yes, take the mic back so that people online can hear.
Just thank you for your response. Just as a comment, when I was 25, I bought a 2-bedroom flat in Grouville, and it was 5 times my salary. The other year, my assistant at work, she was 25 years old. She was a Grouville resident with a very Grouville resident name, and those same flats are now 15 times her salary. So she left the island and moved to Nottingham with her boyfriend. So the youth aren't returning to the island. That's the point.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is there anybody who's got their first question? Because you've already had one question. Somebody over there? Are you putting your hand up? Oh, a gentleman in white there.
Can you hear me? Yep. Right. I'm a relative newcomer to the island. I've been here for just about 40 years. And when I arrived, the committee system seemed to work very well, and things happened. I know that it had people didn't always agree with it, but it worked. And the number of civil servants that we had back in 1978 was about 3,300. Now, and our population then was about 65,000. Now our population is 105, something like that, and we have civil service of over 10,000, and which is really unsustainable, and it is far more percentage-wise than any other administrative area in the UK would have. So my question to the panel is, and I sense that they also feel that we've got too many civil servants, is what can they do to try and reduce the number of civil servants and, in the process, improve the state's finances?
Thank you. Rose first.
Well, I think we have to go through each department and work out and as I've said, what do we actually need to be doing, and what are the nice to haves, and we need to strip out all of the nice to haves and be honest with ourselves about what we can and can't afford, and that I'm afraid will include having redundancies, which won't be great for a lot of people, but we have to start addressing that. And we also have, as Carolyn has said before, the States Assembly just creates more and more work, more and more extra things that don't need doing. Even some of the propositions that are brought before the Assembly have no value, but they cause an awful lot of time in getting someone in the GREF to prepare them. Then they go back, then the Council of Ministers discusses them, then they get watered down to almost nothing, then they get debated in the Assembly. And the Assembly is a very expensive function to run. You've got all the states members sat there. You've got the GREF, you've got the bailiff or the deputy bailiff, and then you've got all the civil servants in the background that are waiting in case they are required to help answer a question. So we need to stop all that. We need to make sure that things that are coming to the Assembly are only things that we need to be doing. That's how I think we could save a lot of money and also reduce our civil service numbers.
Scott.
So what I alluded to before, getting accountability, because at the moment when you're in there and you're a minister, you get told that your strategy and they are operational, and when you try and get involved in the operational, like staff numbers and things, sorry, that's operational, you do get kind of, they try and keep you slightly apart in that area. But if we had the Employment States of Jersey Employees Law set up so that we could set targets and we could hold them to account for what's going on, that would be one way. At the end of every proposition that goes into the Assembly, there's a piece that within standing orders that has to be created called financial and manpower. So you have to try and judge how much money it's going to be needed to do whatever you're asking if it's passed through the Assembly, and how many staff it's needed. I think it should be changed to new manpower, not just financial. But every time you give money, more money to a department, it's generally for new staff. I think we need to get greater control through the Assembly, that when we're voting for things, we're understanding if it's more staff we're going to require to do this. And thirdly, I'd get rid of the carbon neutral roadmap and get rid of those staff straight away, because I think it's a complete waste of time.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you for your question. I think we need to stop acting like a big country. We want to have what everyone else has. We have commissioners that are telling us what we need to do. I think we addressed 1,000 of her recommendations. Really, we need to cut back and work out, like the other panelists have said, work out what we actually need to provide. So we need a police force, we need hospital staff, we need educational staff. Do we really need a children's commissioner? Well, there's a proposition at the moment that's looking at a public services ombudsman. We have a tribunal, we have a complaints tribunal who offer their time for nothing. So if it's a case we've got to give them more teeth, let's give them more teeth. But let's not employ or take on the services of a public services ombudsman, where the initial quote is 1.5 million of estimated costs just to set up an office. So I think we've got to cut back, provide what we really need to do, and provide that well, and all the rest can be cut.
Thank you. Next question. Did I see somebody at the back who wanted to ask something? Have you got your hand up? Have you? Yes, okay, great.
Mark Sylvester from Grouville. Do you have any plans for, if elected, to make Jersey and the rest of the world more environmentally friendly, for our own and the and the global environment, as um, as well as for our health and sustainability.
So plans for making things more environmentally friendly, yeah, for us
Yes.
and for the world, yeah? Okay, so first to answer that will be Scott.
Thank you. I think we need to be highlighting that there are things that can be done, but at the moment, I say we've got this carbon neutral roadmap. We've spent £23 million on it, and I think it's only reached 18% of its target. We're going to have to pump significantly more money into it. And under the roadmap, it actually sets out from this year onwards that all of the way all the way that we're going to get the money is through levies and charges on a population that's already seeing way too much being taken out of their pockets. So I do think that we should be aware of what's going on. I think people should have a choice. I would like to see solar panels on roofs of people's houses to help them get off the grid, so they're more reliant on their own electricity rather than paying the Jersey electricity. But other than that, I think I'm not the right person for you there, because I would stop the work that we're doing right now because it's a vanity project that we can't afford. But I do think that we should be doing things like JEC should be using the money they're trying to do solar farms for and help people get solar energy on their houses. It should start with social housing, and then it should go round and do that way. The less people are reliant on getting their electricity from France or in other areas, the better we will be in and now be able to spend the economy and in our households.
Carolyn.
Thank you for your question, Mark. I think the ways that I would like to see progressed for environmentally friendly island would be to continue the cycle network that I proposed some time ago that's taking an awful long time to deliver. So I would like to see a safe cycle network throughout the island. I think that would help if we've got safe places to walk and cycle. And relatively recently in the States, we passed a proposition for a marine spatial plan, which, if extended, we've got to work with the fishermen on this so as not to kill off their livelihoods whilst we're trying to do that. I will flag that up. But if we can extend the marine spatial plan, I think that would help an awful lot with the carbon sink. So that's as much as I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose.
I think we've got quite a few things in place already, and I'm very much in favour of protecting our environment. And I think that Scott and Carolyn have probably covered most of the extra things that we could be doing.
Thank you. Any more questions? Lady over there in green.
Hi, Debbie Bircham, Grouville girl. I just wanted to ask, we keep hearing about we need more housing, we need more housing. However, I believe that we've actually, although we need that, we actually need to control our population, because it's our population that's getting out of control. There's only so many people that we can get onto this island. So my question would be, how would you control our population?
Carolyn.
Thank you. I think this was an issue that was very, very acute, probably 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago. I think now we're getting to the point that we don't have enough people to do the jobs that we've got over here. And we're not going to have enough people to work in nursing homes, for instance, with an aging demographic. We don't probably have enough people to work in cafes and restaurants. I was on the beach on the weekend, and the ice cream shop shut at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sweltering hot day, shut, no staff. So it is a very difficult balancing act. We need people to do the jobs. We've got an ageing demographic, and we haven't got a young cohort of people in our primary schools and schools. So there's no quick fix answer, I'm afraid.
Rose.
I think Carolyn has actually put all the difficulties that we have got at the moment, that it's necessary to get people into the island. I'm not sure if I think we should be looking at where we are taking the staff from that we require in the care homes and in hospitality, because at the moment they're coming from many, many different countries, and I'm just concerned that this island is currently promising people access to their own languages, access to their culture, and I think it must be difficult if you're trying to teach in schools where they've got something like 40 different languages, and I think we need to address that as much as the overall population numbers, which Carolyn is right, there are a lot of people leaving because they don't want to stay here anymore, but we have got a demand for healthcare workers and hospitality workers, and these are things that we really are going to have to address. Are people going to be able to stay in their own homes when they get older and they require 24-hour care? I think this is something that we all need to talk about together.
Thank you. Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I work in hospitality and have a very diverse staff. Some of the people that have come and worked in the hospitality industry that are local don't want to work Saturday nights and Friday nights, and they don't want to work their evenings. There's plenty of people out there, young people that could come and do what we used to do in the bucket and spade day and get involved in hospitality and work in the coffee shops, but they don't want to. So unless we're going to close down the restaurants and the bars, we need to find our workforce from somewhere, because we're just not finding it locally. They don't want to do it. And I think that's a real shame, because it's one of the most fulfilling jobs, serving people and making sure that they've had a good meal and they've had a good day at the end of the day. But if we can't get our young to go and help with that industry and cut their teeth and learn how to do customer service and be that, then unfortunately it ends up we have to bring people into the island for the population to do it, so that you can all go to dinner and you can all go out for a pint.
Thank you. Next question. Yeah. Nobody else? Because if there aren't any questions, I can move it on to the candidates coming down and mingling with you, and you can ask in person. But if there's anybody else who'd like to ask a question in the public forum, please go ahead. No? A quick one, yeah, because you have had one, but you can have one more. Yeah. You've got an opportunity to have a quick chat though when the three candidates come down. So we'll move on to the kind of mingling part of the evening. Thank you for your questions, and thank you to the candidates for their answers. Thanks also to the Parish Hall staff, the tech team, to Sharon on mic duty, and to everyone who's helped organise tonight's event. If you'd like to talk to the candidates individually, their contact details are in the vote.je website and in the manifesto booklets that have been sent to your houses. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with a judicial graph by 12 noon on the 7th of June. You can now vote early at St Paul's Centre in town, Monday to Friday, until the coming Monday. So if you're in town, you can get it done then. On election day, your polling station's open from 8 till 8. Remember to take photo ID with you. So thank you very much for coming tonight. It has been hot. Let's hope it's a bit cooler when we leave. Good night.